Hi, I'm Florence Theriault, and I'm back to talk with you about some more wonderful antique dolls that have come our way and which we are going to present to the public in an auction and exhibition entitled Bittersweet. Carefully chosen word to headline this collection because it symbolizes the emotions that collectors have. They have the joy, the sweetness of having a wonderful historical object come into their hands that has passed through its own life story of being in the hands of other collectors, the original child owner, sometimes carrying a remarkable historical story with it, which I'm going to be showing you an important one later, and then later experiencing the bittersweet pleasure of knowing that they're going to pass their collection into the hands of other collectors who will cherish it just as they have. So with that bittersweet concept in mind, let's look at some of the wonderful dolls that are going to be coming up in this exhibition. We are privileged, very privileged, to have the paper doll collection of Lorna Lieberman, who lived most of her life in Boston, now is in Kansas City, but lived most of her life in Boston, where she was able to come into contact with early collectors, even earlier than she was. She began collecting back in the 1960s and 70s. And she met some of the early doll authors, the early doll researchers, was an early member of Doll Collectors of America, and was able to acquire and have the good sense and good taste to see some of these unbelievable papier-mâché dolls, which just don't come your way. I'm going to show you some, and in each of these, I'm going to take the doll and turn it so you can see the variations that occur in the making of these dolls. First of all, on the three on the table, the size of them is extraordinary. They might have been created originally as exhibition dolls, which is why they would be so very, very rare to find. Date back to between 1820 and 1840, and again, made of paper mache, and so carefully treasured. Now, look at this wonderful lady, this tall lady, and I want to turn her. You're seeing these beautiful long curls at the side of her head, and you're thinking at first, oh, she has curls all around her head. But when we turn her around, see if I can do this carefully, and you're seeing that the curls are only at the sides of each side of her face. These very, very uniformly arranged long curls. And then the rest of her hair is swept back and formed into this, let me see, 3 or 4 rows of narrow braids that are coiled around and around, forming this wonderful chignon. The maker of the doll had great definition of the hair with deep comb marking on the hair, so it's not just a smooth plateau. You can see the back of her ears formed behind the curls, very, very beautifully done. Long, deep sloping shoulders, and when you come back and you see her face again, I want you to see very perfectly oval face, a beautifully framed face, elongated neck, molded bosom. Everything about this is wonderful. And now for her costume. Wow. Early transfer pattern. This kind of fabric is so rare to find, where the actual design on it, a beautiful design on it, is stamped onto the dress rather than woven into it. Very rare to find, and a beautiful piece. And she has an early Blue Ribbon Award from that Doll Collectors of America, where Lorna Lieberman was a member, back to 1977. She was an award winner, owned by Lorna Lieberman. In the catalog, we have been able to, on many of these dolls, to trace the provenance of the dolls as to who was the owner before Lorna. In many cases, they have appeared in books, and you'll find all of that information in the catalog. So we have this wonderful girl, and I wanted you to notice her enamel eyes with the wonderful, heavily defined lids above the eyes. All of these things took extra detail and extra refinement to get them sculpted into the mold, so they were made part of the luxury factor of these dolls. I like her very, very pale white complexion as well, and now look at her hair. Beautifully arranged ringlet curls. We call them sausage curls or finger curls, whichever, and they tumble onto her shoulders, with some of them having an extra little ringlet curl right at the very tip. They're just absolutely wonderful, and I love her expression because she is one of the few early papier-mâché dolls from this time period that I have actually seen, look at her mouth, smiling. Wonderful, wonderful personality on this doll. Her slightly larger sister or mother or aunt, as you would call her, on this side, probably made for the French market. And during this time period, there's a lot of confusion if dolls were made in Germany or France. Sometimes we can very specifically pinpoint them, but other cases, there were German papier-mâché doll makers, such as a gentleman called Andreas Voigt, who lived in France a good part of the time. He was German, made his doll heads, and then sold those doll heads to the French doll makers who would put on French bodies and promote them as French dolls. So it's kind of hard to identify exactly what they would be. This particular lady is also lovely because she also has glass eyes, although slightly different than the other one. And I want to turn her around. Look at her nose. Very, very aristocratic shape of that nose, very refined nose. And you think her hair is very smoothly pulled away from her face, except for those two looped curls over her ears. And then when you get her completely turned around, you see that she has a very tightly coiled chignon at the back of her head as well. And once again, also having the oval face, the elongated throat, and a very desirable feature in these dolls, the molded bosom. Very wonderful doll in a grand early costume. Very beautifully made. I want to put the three dolls here, and I want to turn them all to the side. I don't know if the camera can pick them up since they're different heights. Perhaps this one I'll hold so I can get her at the same height. And just look at them, the three of them, from these side angles. And you can see the variations in the shape of the face, the shape of the nose. And I hope that's interesting to you. Well, I decided these dolls should have their back to you to start, because then you could see the four of them, their graduated size, and you could see the back of their heads, which we don't tend to look at. Whenever I'm cataloging papier-mâché dolls or other dolls with sculpted hair, I really wish I could do like 5 different shots of each doll, because they really shouldn't just be looked at from the front. They have such wonderful visions from the side, from the back, and so I'm letting you start from the back on all of these and seeing how the different elements were made, sometimes with a chignon, sometimes with a decorative comb, sometimes combining them, as this doll does, where she has the braided hair and the comb tip on side. And when I turn it around, you'll see even a further surprise. And then on this one again, we have the tightly braided chignon. And when you first look at these braids, you just think, okay, it's a braided coronet. But really, look at it tightly. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 tiers. So the person's hair that they were trying to simulate must have been hair that fell way below their hips, and by the time it was braided and wrapped around and around, very, very elegantly done. Never give these dolls just a passing glance. You've got to look at them very closely to really appreciate how wonderful they are. And this girl, which appears to have this tightly braided chignon in the back, so she's very formal and very proper, wait till you see her when we turn her around, and she's kind of a fun girl. So starting from this side, I'm going to show you this doll, which might rank as one of my favorites. And what I wanted you to particularly notice on the back of her hair before we turn her around, she has the sculpted braid, like a comb rather, like a decorative comb, holding the crown of her hair. And then 4 tiers of braids that are looped over it and draped over, and it just is absolutely wonderful. Then you turn her around again. She has a beautiful creamy complexion, flat complexion, and you can see that the front of her face is enhanced with feathering scalloped curls. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 arranged curls on each side of her face, but then to enhance them, you have all of these hand-painted feathering, little arched scallops. Just absolutely wonderful. Beautifully painted features, a wonderful expression, and check out that early costume. It is so unbelievably extraordinary, including the embroidered apron and the early shoes. A wonderful, wonderful doll. Now her sister might be one of my favorite dolls. We have sold this doll a few years ago when we sold the Estelle Johnston collection, and Lorna Lieberman, who the 2 people were very close friends, acquired it from that collection and has enjoyed it for several years. This is such a fine doll. Remember I told you you'd see a surprise? First you had the back of her hair, with the hair upswept, and the decorative hair comb. You have the 2 tiers of braids around the top of her head. And then when you turn her around, you have the real hair with arranged curls framing around the sides. And finally, it just doesn't end, this little decorative comb with gilt accents right at the front. It's a papier-mâché comb, sculpted, painted, and very defined, like the little beading that a decorative comb would have. She has glass eyes and a very regal expression, beautifully shaped throat, just an absolutely wonderful doll, and again, a very, very fine costume. This doll is remarkable. She appears in a papier-mâché book by Christiana Grafnitz, and she is marked on the inside G.K.22. Very, very rare to find the early papier-mâchés that are signed, so just a superior doll. And this doll is 1840, so what does that make her? Almost 180 years old. We could any of us dream to look like her at 180 years old. We have now another one. As the market developed, the dolls began to be made with what in previous times were called milliner models bodies, and they were like very slender kid bodies with wooden lower arms and wooden lower legs. And that's what this particular model is. But she has rarity factors such as her brown eyes, her beautifully sculpted ears, her wonderful decoration of the hair. And once again, if I tip it like this, you can see a little more of the decoration and the scalloped curls around the face and the back, where the braiding is a loop and then a loop that comes here. So not casual, but very, very deliberately done. Fully modeled ears once again, her original body and original costume. And then, I forgot, on the first girl, I have to go back because she has a bonnet, which I don't know if you're the new owner, if you would show her with a bonnet or without, because she's wonderful either way, but don't lose the bonnet if you decide to show her without. Then we have another milliner model, and this was the lady I said had this demure little tightly braided chignon at the back of her head, and you think she's very serious, and then you turn her around, and there's a little more life to her. She has these long ringlet curls that are tumbling, 3 of them on each side, that tumble all the way down onto her shoulders. And let me show you a side view of that as well. Very beautifully done, and again has a slender kid body and the wooden lower limbs. And she has this wonderful original costume. And one other from this early period that I wanted to show you was this beautiful example, who has, again, the combination of the painted hair, or the painted scalloped, in this case, a solid dome with black paint, just like a cap painted at the top of the head to signify where the hair would go. And then her original mohair wig in its original arrangement with the rolled curls and little flowers and ribbons sewn in between. So a wonderful, wonderful depiction of her, and again, with her original costume. I always think the sculpting on these early papier-mâchés, their chins are so well defined. I don't know if I guess I have a thing about chins, but it really defines itself well to me. I have 3 other papier-mâchés to show you because they're different, and I think in those of you who are always looking for the unusual, these are really rare and have different features. And I'm going to show you her. Now, when I first show you this doll, you think that she has a tight cap on her head. Well, she does, but it's not cloth. It's painted. She is a solid dome doll of papier-mâché, and then she has the painted brown cap with the black brim from a particular European region, a traditional region. And in case you didn't want to show her that way, she comes with her original cap with the embroidery at the back, beautifully done embroidery at the back. And I want to show you the inside of the cap so you can see how the detailing is done on the inside. And then it exactly fits over her head and accommodates itself to the painted cap beneath. She has black enamel eyes, and she has a very distinctive and unusual body with the muslin below and then these paper mache arms that go to above the elbows. Very, very different doll and very, to me, a very beautiful one. And then we have two fun-loving girls. We have this one, which is so unique, and watch her. Flirty eyes that after almost 200 years, she's still flirting, she's still a coquette. Absolutely wonderful doll. But her special features don't stop there, because I want to turn her around, and you can see she has, again, the solid domed head, and she has the cut slit at the top of the head, which I'm going to show you in a porcelain doll in a minute, in which the wig would be inserted. And in this case, she has these long looped curls at each side of her head. And this wonderful doll with this classic milliner model body I was talking about, with a slender kid body with the wooden lower limbs, is wearing her totally original costume. So she has been flirting for all these years. And then finally, this one. Wow. I have never seen this doll before. Now remember I said about the smiling large paper mache before? Well, this girl, she's way beyond smiling. She is laughing. She has an open mouth. She has little molded teeth inside, and she is absolutely delighted at whatever she's looking at. Very, very rare. Smiling expression, open mouth, glass eyes, all of these features add up to make her a very, very distinctive and unique doll. And let me just turn her so you again can get a side profile of her. This is why I wish you all to come to our auctions. I don't care if you buy a doll or not. Just come to the exhibitions, because seeing these dolls in person is the dimensional aspect of seeing them in person and seeing their relative size and just really looking at them. It's an unbelievable education. And if you have that time, or you're in the locale, or you can fly to an auction and look at the exhibition, please, I urge you to do so, because it's like a once-in-a-lifetime museum coming your way.